Ten measles cases are confirmed in Quebec. Newfoundland and Labrador is the only province that imprisons migrants. Fired radio talk show host and Canada's main Black Conservative wins Oshawa by-election. Canada is about to purchase nearly $50 million in military gear from Israel. Haiti declares a state of emergency as the capital plunges into crisis. And France makes abortion a constitutional right. Good morning. It's Tuesday, March 5th. I'm Nora, and here are your headlines. Public health officials say that Quebec is the epicenter of the ongoing measles outbreak in Canada. 10 cases have been confirmed in the province so far. At least 3 of the cases have been linked to international travel. Some have been linked to community transmission. 7 of the cases have been confirmed in Montreal. 7 of the cases have been confirmed in Montreal, which has a lower vaccination rate than other regions in the province. In fact, there are some schools in Montreal where the vaccination rate is just 30%. CBC earlier announced that, but didn't say where or which schools had such low vaccination rates. Both Quebec's public health director and the federal health minister have pointed to vaccine hesitancy, or refusing to actually inoculate yourself against measles, as being the cause for the uptick in cases. They are encouraging people to get vaccinated, obviously, and to vaccinate their kids. The measles vaccine is 95% effective in preventing infection. Measles is extremely contagious, and in some cases, it can be fatal. It can also cause complications in young children, pregnant people, and people with low immunity. Some cases of the virus have also been confirmed in Ontario, while BC has confirmed its first case since 2019. Next, Newfoundland and Labrador remains the only province that legally allows for the imprisonment of migrants, according to CBC News. In 2022, BC became the first province to end its agreement with Canada Border Services Agency to imprison people for immigration-related reasons. Since then, every province, with the exception of Newfoundland and Labrador, has followed suit. According to Border Services, 6 migrants were imprisoned in the province. In an interview with CBC News, an expert in immigration detention with Human Rights Watch said that Newfoundland and Labrador's continuation of the policy is concerning because it could see Border Services transferring people from other provinces to Newfoundland and Labrador. Research by human rights organizations show that in cases where migrants have been detained, they've been made to endure harsh conditions that led to deteriorating mental health and sometimes suicide. The article by CBC's Brigitte Biraud doesn't mention, though, news you'll remember from the Daily News a while back. Remember that Quebec had said that it would end the practice of jailing migrants, and researchers discovered that it was still happening? Well, I would be curious to know where that is at. At the very least, we know that CBSA in Laval is building a new facility that's not a jail or a prison, but it's still managed by CBSA. So, regardless of where you are in Canada, you really should be paying attention to where migrants are being housed. Next, Jamil Javani looks poised to win the Oshawa by-election, which means that this guy, who is irritating to listen to, will be a member of parliament. The by-election was to replace Aaron O'Toole, and the results came in last night. Javani was given a career by talk radio, which allowed him to jump into the national spotlight as being a famous Black conservative. Javani went to Yale for law school, where, according to Wikipedia, he was best friends with J.D. Vance, the dude who wrote Hillbilly Elegy and who's now a Republican senator. Javani ended up being fired by Bell because he misgendered Demi Lovato on air and didn't push back against COVID misinformation. Javani disagrees with that having been what happened and instead says that he was fired because he didn't conform to Black stereotypes that Bell expected of him. You can look the guy up yourself and see which was probably more likely. The CBC article repeats a lot of what I just copied here from Wikipedia, like a lot. I'm not sure about that reporting, CBC. But it also talks to one guy, Larry St. Marie, who said he didn't know much about Javani, but voted Conservative to vote out the Liberals. It is true. It's not too much of a surprise to see. It is true that during a by-election, especially this late into a government's tenure, that people vote mostly in protest to who is in power. The big question for me then is, What happened to the NDP? Oshawa is a place that they can win, and they didn't. Next, while we might be somewhat used to hearing about all the weapons that Canada is sending to Israel, that is, of course, if we read alternative news, well, apparently that road is a two-way street. Alex Kosh from The Maple is reporting that the Canadian military is planning to buy $43 million in missiles from Israel. Specifically, they will be buying the Spike LR2. The anti-tank missiles will be used in Latvia, quote, as part of Canada's NATO mission in that country, unquote, which is an interesting thing considering that beyond war games, we aren't formally engaged in a war there. Why would we need anti-tank missiles in Latvia? Or should Canada be voting to actually go to war with Russia? The purchase was part of the $316 million that Canada paid for military equipment for use in Latvia as part of that mission. The purchase plans were announced in December by Defense Minister and serial money waster during the G20, Bill Blair. They will be buying arms from Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, an arms dealer that is wholly owned by the state of Israel. It promotes the Spike LR2 for its, quote, high hit, high kill probability, unquote. These missiles have been used by Israel against Gaza several times in the past and have been used in Gaza since October 7th. The U.S. buys some $4.7 billion in sales from Rafael. Rachel Small, an organizer with World Beyond War, told The Maple that Canada is Israel's sixth largest military trading partner, which is surprising considering what in the hell do we need any of these lethal weapons for? Next to international news, and first to Haiti. A state of emergency was declared after an explosion in gang violence overtook the capital, Port-au-Prince. At least 12 people have been killed and almost 4,000 inmates escaped as two prisons were stormed over the weekend. The violence has also displaced 15,000 people from their homes, according to human rights groups. The gangs then went to the airport where they shut down air traffic and encouraged all Americans to leave the country as soon as possible. This is just the latest escalation in ongoing tensions that the government is experiencing since former President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated 2 years ago. Since then, the presidency has remained vacant, while the country's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, who Moïse appointed before his death, has become the de facto leader. Henry's hold on power has been on thin ice as civil society groups have called his legitimacy into question. Last year, he indefinitely postponed presidential and legislative elections, which have not been held since 2016. And as the latest surge of violence began last week, he was in Kenya to discuss revival of a plan possibly backed by the UN to help deal with the gang violence in that country, something that civil society groups have also criticized and resisted. And I have to say, I really am not that comfortable with the gang violence moniker, but if you look around in international reporting, everybody uses it. It isn't as simple, obviously, as gangs versus the government. There is much deeper issues at play here. And so I'm just going to point that out, and maybe I'll need to find a better word because Haiti will, of course, be on the daily news probably again very soon. Canada has been involved in missions in Haiti for many years, going back to 2004, and our very questionable involvement in the politics there. We've signaled our support for a UN-backed, Kenya-led multinational deployment into the country. And last week, Ottawa said it would provide $80 million in support of the effort. One of the gang federations is run by Jimmy Cherizier. He was a former elite police officer who has claimed responsibility for the increase in violence. Cherizier is trying to stop the return of Henry. Finally, to France, where the country's parliament voted to enshrine abortion explicitly as a constitutional right, becoming the first country to do so in the world. Lawmakers in both houses of parliament voted overwhelmingly in support of the amendment. The final vote was 780 to 72 in favor of the measure. After the vote, the Eiffel Tower was lit up with the words, "My body, my choice," of course, in French, to celebrate. While abortion has been legal in France since 1975, some MPs argued that it was still subject to change, making the amendment necessary. Some also pointed to the recent reversal of Roe versus Wade in the US as the reason for the amendment. Now, just before any Canadians get the idea that you want to open the Constitution in Canada to do this, let me say, don't even think about it. The strength of Canada's abortion laws is that there are no abortion laws. We don't have abortion laws. Abortion is not regulated in any different way than brain surgery is regulated, or heart surgery, or hip replacement surgery, or toe surgery. It's all medical procedures that have their own regulations guiding how these procedures are supposed to happen. And the second you start messing with law to say that abortion is either legal or not legal, that's when you start opening it up to the incrementalism of, oh, it should be illegal up until, oh, it should be legal up until, oh, this, oh, that. Canada has one of the most radical abortion regimes in the world simply by not having a law at all. And that's something that we need to defend and celebrate, and understand that when liberals use the promise of enshrining our right to abortion services in law, it's more of a show to demonstrate how pro-abortion they are than anything else. Because the best way to defend abortion services in Canada is to make the abortion pill free, which they didn't do in this new pharmacare announcement, even though they made abortion be the reason that they were giving out free birth control drugs. Okay, fine, good for the free birth control drugs, but not good for the not free abortion pills. Expanding access, of course, to medical help, including family doctors all across Canada, and stopping our obsession with private medicine. Those are the ways that we protect reproductive health in this country. Those are your headlines for Tuesday, March 5th. I'm Nora. You're listening to this podcast at sandynora.com, on the Real News Network podcast feed, and anywhere you get your podcasts. It is Tuesday. It's Sandy and Nora Day. New episode comes out in a couple of hours, and we talk about the government and opposition parties seem united in their opposition to protesting. And when does a peaceful protest at an art gallery turn into violence? You do not want to miss this episode. It will be out in a couple of hours. You're listening to this podcast at sandynora.com, on the Real News Network podcast feed, and anywhere you get your podcasts. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. I'll talk to you tomorrow.